Hello and welcome to my channel on Ancient and Chinese Astrology. I am professional astrologer Alex Zagata from Bulgaria, and I would like to make a video titled "A Brief History of Indian Astrology," which is called Jyotish, but which is also called Vedic astrology, especially for the last 4 decades, which is incorrect. Now, this is a hot topic because of various reasons. One of them is that due to historical and religious reasons, Indians are very attached to their religious beliefs, and they are also somewhat intertwined with astrology, with Indian astrology. And this has resulted in they got severely looted, and they've been looted and attacked by various empires and countries, and notably the Arabs and the British Empire, and this has resulted in some Indians accepting Indian astrology as basically as a gift of God, which it is, but that it is the only true astrology, that it never evolved, and that it's many thousands of years old, etc., and that any other astrologies are deviations and even inferior, etc. So this is my channel, my YouTube channel, Ancient in Chinese Astrology. This is my Rumble channel, Ancient and Chinese Astrology. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe and follow me. This is my website, Ancient and Chinese Astrology, 100%astrology.com. Okay, so let's get started. This is going to be a long video because I was not able. I hate to toot my horn, so to say, but I was not able to find the information I was looking for. So I've used many sources. As you see, I've opened many tabs. I always give my sources, but it took me months of preparing for this video, gathering all the books, systematizing the information, etc. So it's going to be get yourself prepared. I'm going to create chapters for the video to make it easier to access specific parts that you might be interested in as a viewer. But so let's get started. So this is the image that I've selected for my video. This is an image of India, and also this is an Indian horoscope natal chart that is called South Indian format. I did this out of respect. I myself use the so-called North Indian chart format, which is actually not North Indian, but anyhow, the point is out of respect, because this is the indigenous, the native Indian chart format, the South Indian. So I've included it, and the birth chart that I've included is that of oops, I closed it. Well, anyhow, it's the chart of Ken Rao. His chart is public knowledge. I'm not disclosing anything, and you can find it at astro.com and other resources as well. But he is one of the most eminent Indian astrologers. He's Indian himself, and he has played an enormous role in the restoration of Indian astrology, of Jyotish, science of light. And so this is his chart. So this format is nothing like the format in ancient astrology. However, this chart format is exactly the same as the chart format of one of the 3 types of Chinese astrology. I have a video. Let me show you. History is extremely important. That's one reason why I'm making, because if you don't know where you come from, what the roots are, you simply get lost, or you'll be bound to repeat history, or not know where specific doctrines come from, why they were imported, etc. So I'm closing the circle. I have a video of ancient astrology, I have a video of Chinese astrology, and this video is going to be even longer because I will provide many sources. We'll go through the major books of Chinese of Indian astrology, as I've done with these videos. So I was saying that in this video, brief history of Chinese astrology, I show the various chart formats, and one of them is this one. This chart format is used in the so-called emperor astrology, or some call it purple star astrology, Zivei Do Shu. But the key thing here is that it was imported from India to China, not from China to India. The Indian astrology predates Chinese astrology, but Indian astrology is itself predated by Babylonian astrology, which is the oldest. But anyhow, this is not a type of that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to educate and to provide information that you will not find, I would not say anywhere else, but you'd have to dig a lot. And as a professional astrologer of so many years, believe me, I had to dig a lot. Okay, so let's get to it. Why am I making this video? Point one. You'll forgive me, these are notes in Bulgarian, but the 95% of the presentation is, it's in English, but I also wrote down, because I made a video in my native Bulgarian language for this, because you can imagine, since there is not enough information in English, you can imagine the paucity of information in my native Bulgarian. But anyhow, so one of the reasons why I'm making this video is because, contrary to a lot of talking and writing, but without presenting any chronology, facts and sources, basically I read several articles, I watched several videos, and the title of the article and the video was History of Vedic Astrology, or Indian of Jyotish, etc. And there were no sources, there was no chronology. So these were classic clickbait materials. Also, another reason I'm making this video is because of my interests, and after the videos that as I just showed, the brief history of ancient astrology, a brief history of Chinese astrology, I want to go full circle, because I've grown very fond of Indian astrology, and I've begun to intensively study it. The third part is I'm creating this video out of respect for this tradition and for my teachers. And my teachers are Simon Chokoisky and Nadya Lakaeva. I will also include their names in the video description. Also, one of the reasons why I'm making this video is I would like to put in their proper place the Indian astrologers and astrologers of the Indian tradition that spread bombastic and incorrect claims, denigrating and mocking the other types of astrological schools and traditions. They say that Indian astrology is 5,000 years old or 6,000 years old, which is nonsense. And here I have a quote. They are not the only ones, by the way. They're fanatics in all schools. There is a quote here by a Bulgarian astrologer. She specializes in Chinese astrology, and she says, I translate, the science of Bazi is more than 5,000 years old, and for a long time this science has been kept a secret. Bazi is the most popular branch of Chinese astrology. It's called Bazi in Chinese. It means 4 pillars of destiny. 5,000 years? No, of course not. As I showed in my video, with all the major classical sources by name and by the name of the authors, Chinese astrology is 1200 to 1300 years. It comes from 7th, 8th century. This is it. By the same, so this is the same type of bombastic statements. Also here in Bulgaria we have one of the most famous astrologers of the Babylonian tradition, Rumen Kolev. I will quote him shortly. He's also a scientist, and a scholar, and he discovered something that basically rewrote history, but it has not rewritten it yet. He discovered and found a mathematical and astronomical proof that there is this Babylonian astrolabe that it actually dates from 5500 BCE, before the Common Era, so 7,500 years ago. This is, by the way, the age of the oldest calendar in the world, which is the Bulgarian calendar, which the Chinese got from the Bulgarians. But the point is that there are people here in Bulgaria who say we are practicing Babylonian astrology as it was practiced 5,000 years ago. Nonsense of this sort. Well, 5,000 years ago there was no astrology. There were specific configurations and some there are some texts, but it's no, they're just fragments. Just fragments. You cannot. There was no horoscope. There were no horoscopes of people. So this is meant to disarm the potential client and say, wow, this astrologer is practicing the real deal, the most original astrology. That's not true, as I have shown and proved in my videos here, and also here, this one especially. All right, so I will get into it later about how old Indian astrology is. And what we mean by that. Also, yeah, but these are not. I mean, for example, I had a client a few years ago. She sought out my services for rectification. I hate to say very famous, but I'm one of the few astrologers who offer and actually also teach 24-hour rectification. That is rectification without a time of birth. Anyhow, her time of birth was not was from a birth certificate, but she had been to one Indian astrologer and one from India actually, and one modern astrologer, and they both got different results. But anyhow, because when the client fills in the questionnaire, I ask, has someone rectified your chart, and if so, with what methods? And she said yes. And she gave the website to these astrologers, to these Indian astrologers, and in this website they say explicitly Indian astrology is 6,000 years old, 7,000 years old, which is nonsense. Because the methods we're using for Indian astrology have nothing to do with the type of astrology that was used those years ago, those thousands of years ago. All right, so point 2. Vedic culture in its splendor. Again, we have to differentiate between Vedic culture, the Vedas, and Indian astrology. They're separate. There are some connections, but they're basically separate. I will quote several sources, including scholars, including people who speak and translate from Sanskrit. So if you have followed my work, if you have watched some of my videos or been in contact with me regarding my services, you know I am extremely thorough. I do my homework. I always give sources, and I follow the scientific approach. When you say something, you have to provide a source. Make sure to differentiate between what is your opinion and what is acceptable and provable facts or predominant theories based on some evidence. I have to be very careful about that. So while I was researching this, in preparation for this video, I came across this video called Babylonian Astrology and Astroology, Kugler and the Pan-Babylonians with Rumen Kolev. And from the 23 minutes to 28 minutes and 50 seconds, there is a link to the video, but if you input this into YouTube, you will quickly find the video. And I transcribed what he said, and he said the Indus Valley civilization, you can read here about this civilization, was thriving parallel with the Sumerians. So it was like 4,000, maybe even 5,000 BC, although here the Wikipedia source dates it later. Anyhow, that's not important. The beginnings of both civilizations are going until 3000 BC, even 2000 BC. So in Mesopotamia, they called it Melucha. So the Mesopotamian civilization called the Indus Valley civilization Melucha. And they looked at it as a paradise on earth. So this means a lot. I did not know this because I personally know Rumen Kolev, and he's, as I said, he practices, Babylonian and ancient astrology, and he has derided Indian astrology because he believes that they use the wrong Ayanamsha, Alhiri or Krishnamurti, which is incorrect actually. These are the correct Ayanamsha, not Aldebaran 15, so-called Fagan Bradley. I have a separate video on this that I show with specific charts. This one I saw anyhow. But the point is that this thing coming from him, who has derided Indian astrology, means a lot, and he's quoting sources. So he says that when we look at the Indus Valley civilization and the archaeology and what it has to say about the Indus River civilization, it looks like things were very, very good there. There were no wars, there were no satraps like cruel kings. Like, society was much more egalitarian, much more peaceful, and much more spiritual than the Mesopotamian civilization. This is very important, folks, because again, it's not about competition, but you have to always consider the culture which gave birth to astrology in this case, because this is a channel above all about astrology, also some divination, but above all astrology. So the civilization that gave birth to Babylonian astrology was different, but this astrology, the Indus Valley civilization, this civilization was how shall I put it? More peaceful, more advanced in their spiritual, in their values, in their in their everyday life, in their societal organization, etc., etc. This is what archaeologists say. I mean, even though Roman Kolev himself, he prefers and he uses, he doesn't care about, but he's admitting that. I mean, he's quoting science. So as he says, because you see, the archaeological data does not show a big stratification in the Indus Valley civilization. Like, they could not find some big castles where rich, powerful, cruel kings lived and terrorized everybody else, and some regions of slums where the rest of the population enslaved and poor lived like in almost all other cultures. So the scientists didn't find this, the archaeologists that dug there. They find some kind of egalitarian society where people were equal in their wealth, more or less, and also peaceful. They could not find any proof of wars, of war kind of culture, weapons or big walls surrounding the city and so on. For example, the big Chinese wall, the Great Wall. Again, this is not just, it's important to keep in mind that this civilization eventually, or its descendants rather, gave birth to Indian astrology. Again, at the time of this civilization of Melucha, there was no Indian astrology, there was Vedic astrology, which is basically Vedic astronomy, not astrology, as we get into later. Here there is an article on Wikipedia about Melucha, which I came across while researching. What they found, however, was that a lot of iconography, tablets, pictures, etc., even with science. They had a script there, which is still not deciphered, etc., etc. So this is important. This is important. Also, there is a book written in 1920. Here is the source. It's on archive, so it's no copyright. Hellenism in Ancient India, written in 1920, and chapter 5 is astronomy. So this chapter is about the interactions between the Hellenistic world and India, and how India got there were influences both ways, but India got more influenced by the ancient astrology, as I will show later on also. Speaking of the splendor, of the magnificence of the Vedic civilization and also of the Indian civilization, because this is much later, this is thousands of years later. Take a look here, folks. And again, I always give, but in case someone thinks, where you're coming this, you're making this up, of course I'm not. There is a quote here, and I will show you where it is from, and you can just a second. This is the I think I showed you. Did I show you the book? This is from Archive, the Hellenism in Ancient India. This is a quote by Abu Mashar, translated by Dr. Levente Laszlo. Abu Mashar, Discourses with Abu Mashar on the Secrets of Astrology, and Abu Mashar said that it was the Chaldeans, the Mesopotamians, Babylonians, who first invented astrology, and they were followed by the Indians, the Egyptians, the Persians, the Romans, the Syrians, and the Arabs. this is a good quote. Although again, the type of astrology he means is mundane astrology, and because this astrology was again the Chaldeans, there was no horoscopic astrology. Likewise with the Indians, horoscopic astrology, as I will explain, as I have explained, came about in the 2nd century before the Common Era, so slightly more than 2000 years ago, 2100 years. That's it. Before that, there was no astrology as we call it today anywhere in the world. This is what the proof, I mean, this is what the evidence shows from all over the world so far. But I will get into it. Just a second. I was going to Ken Rao, correct. This is, so again, this is, I will give it in the description, an interview with Ken Rao. This is his student. He is Paul Manley. He is an author of a great book on birth time rectification. Very extremely useful book with Indian methods. This is Indian astrology that we're talking about. But so this is a quote, as you see, because I will leave it here. You can pause and check it, and you can read it later. But the point is that this is a quote from a member of a British Parliament, or he's some British, 1835, folks, 190 years ago. And he says, "I have traveled across the length and breadth of India, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have not seen in this. I have seen in this country such high moral values, people of such high caliber." So this is a testament to the greatness, to the splendor of the previous civilization, of the Vedic civilization, the Indus Valley civilization, whose descendants are living in India now, although some have disputed that, but I'm not going to get into this. But the point is that this is before, when the British Empire started looting India. India's GDP, gross domestic product, was 23% of the global GDP. 23%, between 1/4 and 1/5 of the world's production was produced by India alone. All right, so much for. By the way, actually, no. This is something that I recommend. This is one of my favorite TV series. It's called Highlander. There is also a movie, great song. But anyhow, there is a season 4. There is an episode titled "The Wrath of Kali." I believe it's episode 9 of season 4. You can check it. I strongly recommend that episode. It's again, it's science fiction, but not entirely, because you get to see some of the great parts about India, and you get to see some of the fanaticism of some Indians. And this fanaticism was not without reasoning, I should say, but still great, because it shows life in India a few centuries ago when they were under British rule, and how life was, and the arrogance with which the British Empire ruled India. It's very useful. I recommend it. Very instructional. All right. So moving on. Why the concept Vedic astrology is wrong when it appeared, and why? This is point 3 that I'm discussing. So, all right, I will present several sources. The first one is let's see. I can close this. This is a picture from my favorite site, Pixabay, Full Pix. This one. All right. So, Vedic astrology in commas, what it is and what it's not, by Vic Dicara. Vic Dicara is an American astrologer who he was also a musician. I don't remember. He used to be, anyhow. As far as I know, he lives in Japan. But that's what is important is that he speaks. He knows Sanskrit. He has a YouTube channel, and where he reads Sanskrit live, he makes live videos, live streams, and he translates classical sources, only classical sources, 7 planets, etc. Traditional Indian astrology. So this article is from 2012. I will again give it in the description, but I want to quickly show. I want to quickly go through what he says. Again, this is someone who he practices this type of astrology, Indian astrology, not Western astrology, not Chinese astrology. All right. So I strongly recommend the article. Let's see. But basically, it's because I have a lot of material to cover. Basically, the type of astrology that was practiced and that was mentioned, for example, Vedanga, Jyotish, etc. These are astronomical texts. There is no, as you see, there is no hint of natal interpretation. There is no reference to signs, houses, any of the other mainstays of modern Vedic in commas astrology. So it's misleading to call it Vedic. And because it isn't really Vedic doesn't mean it's not exceedingly excellent and impressive. Of course. The term Vedic astrology should be reserved for the system of astrology literally defined in the Veda and its direct ancillaries. No astrologer in the world practices this. No, I repeat, when you work with clients, you cannot practice this so-called the original Vedic astrology, because it's not natal astrology. So those who claim that they practice it's a misnomer. They're purposefully or out of ignorance misleading their clients. See, he also says many gurus now asked disciples to blindly and blanketly accept what they teach without asking serious questions. This attitude is anti-Vedic. The entire Vedic corpus of the Upanishads is built of inquiry, scrutiny, and analysis. And if we don't think carefully and ask important questions, knowledge itself falls into disrepair. Credit and glory to my teachers who are exactly that. They welcome questions. They want you. They are fine with. Excuse me. They're fine with you disagreeing. If you disagree, that's fine. Show me the source. Show me the proof. Show me in the chart practically. That's all right. No one is all knowing. That's all right. We have to keep this spirit alive. This spirit of inquiry. Very, very important. The fact is, the books that are the basis of modern astrology in India did not exist before 1,000 years ago. Let that sink in, friends. Let that sink in. Yes, that's very old, but it falls very short of being ancient or Vedic. The Brihad Parashara Horoshastra in particular did not exist before the 19th century. This is the most important, the most influential book of Indian astrology. Again, I will go through not all of them, but the most important ones. There are a lot. By the way, over this article is 13 years old because of this term Vedic astrology. Everyone keeps parroting in Vedic search engines, etc. Websites. Even Vigdikara started calling Vedic astrology because of this, and not just himself. James Braha, the American who popularized Indian astrology, Hindu astrology in the United States. He went to India in the early 80s. He met teachers. And his first book is Hindu astrology. He always called it Hindu astrology because this is what his teachers called it, Hindu, never Vedic. And over the last years, in his latest book, he also put Vedic astrology there because of this hype. But hype or not, the facts are not such. So if Indian astrology is not Vedic, what was Vedic astrology? So Indian astrology today, what is used is personal or natal astrology. The charts of individuals, what I said. Most importantly, today's Indian astrology is primarily based on 9 planets, 12 signs and houses. Ancient Vedic astrology was not. It was primarily based on roughly 20 fixed stars, the asterisms, the nakshatras, and the manner in which the moon moved through these stars and formed combinations with the sun and associated phases. So again, the sources, this is someone who reads Sanskrit, who practices Indian astrology, and this is what he says. 9 planets in 12 signs and houses, however, is never mentioned, not in the times of ancient Vedic astrology, nor in the NATO interpretations that soon get importance. So, folks, you see, this is a long article. I'm going to here he gives Sanskrit, starts translating. You can check it and look it up, and pause the video and read it, etc., etc. The first and foremost concern of ancient Vedic astrology is the birth star, the nakshatra occupied by the moon, etc., etc., etc. I mean, it's just for those that, I mean, if you tell this to a client, well, fine. Gonna say, what about my marriage, or what about my marriage prospects, what about my career, what about my friends, what about my health, what about my finances, how are they this year, how are they this month, how about my friends, will I travel this year? Where is this? It's not there. It's not just in the Vedic sources, in the before horoscopic astrology came about, as I said, 2000 years ago. It is not also in the ancient Babylonian sources, Hellenistic sources, not Hellenistic, Babylonian sources. It's not there because it did not exist. This knowledge came later. All right. This is also very important. Well, if Vedic astrology doesn't primarily come from Vedas, where does it come from? Indian astrology, it comes from India. And one of the most glorious things about Indian Vedic culture is in fact its openness to plurality. India has a unique ability to very carefully maintain very old traditions while simultaneously being open, plural, and inclusive. Hinduism itself attests to this. This is a very valuable trait, respect to the Indian people. It has the oldest roots of any modern culture, and in many ways is the most attractive and vibrant spiritual and philosophical culture in the world even today. For as long as we have historical records, India has had open borders and has especially welcomed philosophical and scientific exchange with other cultures. Folks, just please think on this and compare it with the modern Pharisaic, rigid claims of Indian astrologers saying we are the best, this is Jyotish astrology, this is everything else, it comes, this is anti-Vedic, as he says, as Vigdikara says. The truly Indian and Vedic way is to embrace knowledge from wherever it comes and to allow it to develop, evolve, and blossom. This is why I have bolded this, colored this. Thus, the astrologers of ancient India mingled with the astrologers of other ancient cultures. Absolutely, and this is not just valid for India. This is valid for Egypt, for the Hellenistic world, for the Roman world, for the Persian world, for the Arabic world, for the Chinese world, etc. All right. We have no definition of 12 signs and houses in any Vedic text. All right. The tenets of modern Indian astrology. I mean, it's not modern. I mean, it's what we call Indian astrology, which is 2000 years old, etc., 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 etc. All right, closing. Here, Vic also has a book. All right, let's move on to the other source, which is Vedic Astrology Critically Examined. This is an excerpt from the third extended edition of his book. Dieter Koch was Swiss, or either German or Swiss, I believe Swiss. I believe he also died 2 years ago or 3 years ago, something like that. And the reason I'm quoting him is because he also knew Sanskrit. He was a scholar who knew Sanskrit. So again, I'm not quoting just about anybody. I'm quoting people who have gone through these sources. So he says, by designating this astrology, Indian astrology, as Vedic, i.e. that is connecting it with the sacred writings of Hinduism, the Vedas, they allege that this astrology has a spiritual background and ultimately goes back to divine revelation. Also, they tend to teach this astrology within a guru-disciple relationship where the authority of the teacher and tradition plays a much bigger part than in common Western teaching. Accordingly, in commas, Vedic astrologers appear very self-confident and claim superiority of their teachings over Western astrology. In the present article, I want to critically examine what is behind such claims. First of all, he says Western astrology, and this is wrong. This is a mistake because Indian astrologers also make this mistake. They dub any astrology Western. It's not Western, friends. There was no. I repeat, there is no Western astrology until the second millennium. Ancient astrology is the original astrology. Ancient astrology. From Babylon, then Hellenistic astrology, then Perso-Arabic astrology. And then it came the second millennium to Europe with their Latin tradition. So it's not Western. If you look at a map, you will see that Babylon, I mean, it's close to my country. It's close to 30 degrees east of 30 something degrees east of London, of the Greenwich Meridian. So it's not Western. It's Eastern astrology. There is no Western astrology. So Indians they make this mistake of saying Western astrology is inferior. It uses sun signs, etc. Western astrology is modern astrology. Ancient astrology is the oldest astrology, and it influenced Indian and also, I mean, Western astrology is it's basically the last remnants, like the last 5%, 10% of ancient astrology. And the Indian astrologers that criticize Western astrology, none of them have studied the classical texts. So they do a great disservice, and this is not the way. And I will show you how some of the most respected Indian astrologers, what they said about their colleagues, their ancient colleagues about ancient astrology, about the Hellenistic world. So traditional Hindus believe that the Vedic culture, including Indian astrology, was revealed about 5,000 years ago by holy Indian sages in India, called rishis, and was from its beginning perfect, eternally valid, and holy. Thus, in their opinion, culture was not developed in terms of a progressive upward development, as Westerners believe, but was established as the beginning of time by divine beings in highest perfection, and since then has only deteriorated. For this reason, Hindu traditionalists tend to interpret Western notions of the history of culture, which assumes that the ancients were more primitive than we are, as an insult of their greatest saints. Now, there are things here that I agree with. There are also things that I disagree with. But I want to stick to facts. I'm just showing that this is one of the arguments that they use of the Indian astrologers that they use. So anyhow, this is not the main tenet of my video. The main tenet is the historical sources and the chronology. As a result, the original version of the present essay has led to very violent and emotional reactions on the part of Indian astrologers. My considerations were interpreted by them as an aggressive act not only against Indian astrology but even against the Vedic religion and Indian culture. So you see, he's examining, he's studying, he's trying to prove something and go through the sources, again in Sanskrit. And he says, yes, it's not that I attack the Vedic religion itself, even less so as I myself am a follower of a Vedic doctrine, namely Bhagavad Gita, or the Vedanta teachings of Krishna. So he himself is a Vedic follower. But again, Vedic philosophy, Vedic culture versus Indian astrology. Different things. I mean, this is a very long article also, but again, very importantly, folks. One of the reasons I'm showing him also, the Indians themselves traditionally do not call their astrology Vedic, or have not done so until recently. The traditional expression is simply Jyotisha, the science of light. The term Vedic astrology appeared only in recent decades, with the aforementioned boom of Hindu astrology in the West. I already covered that briefly. James Braha, in the 80s, his first book is Hindu Astrology for the modern Western astrologer. So the Indians themselves did not call it Vedic. So what are we talking about? We're talking some sort of hype. Evil tongues say that the term was invented only because Vedic, i.e. spiritual astrology, sells better. there is some truth to that, probably. But anyhow, in the West, it was made very popular by American astrologers David Frawley. Well, James Braha also was the first one, actually. The term Vedic is more often to use to express the idea that this astrology is of sacred science which was revealed by the rishis, the founders of Vedic wisdom, more than 5,000 years ago, and was handed down from generation to generation without any changes until the present day. Well, this is this is wrong. This is wrong. And by the way, I see the rationale, because astrology, it is indeed a divine gift. It was given by the divine, but this is true for any culture. For example, in ancient astrology, we don't know the founders. We know some of the founders, but the other founders, there is also a problem of dating them. I mean, they're dated within 100 or 200 years, and we're not sure whether these people were whether these creators were they human, were they hybrids, were they aliens, were they angels, were they what? And I mean, I can give specific names, but I've already given them in my video, A Brief History of Ancient Astrology. But so there is a great similarity here. The same thing is in China with the Fuxi, about feng shui, etc., etc. And those that predated the Yellow Emperor. Yellow Emperor in China is 2600 BCE, before the Common Era, and this is his. So before him, the beings that came, they were not human. You can look it up, you can check it. But anyhow, the point is I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem, and which is, I mean, it's not a problem, a huge problem, is that it was handed down from generation to generation without any changes until the present day. Well, this is nonsense. This is nonsense because, again, and I will show the books, many books I will show you. I'm yet to show you the original astrology. This type of astrology was mundane astrology. Did not have to do with individuals, so it was inapplicable. It could not be used by individual people. So something happened later, thousands of years later, that then, if we argue 2,000 years ago, we could argue this. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, according to the books. But even the books, there are problems, because look what he says. For example, when the astrological textbook Brihat Parashara Horashastra, the most influential one, claims to be a revelation by the Vedic seer Parashara, it's taken at face value. In reality, however, the oldest part of this work was written only about 1400 years ago. This is true. This is true. I will show you. This is one of the books, of course, that I have examined. And contrary to what one would expect considering its current popularity, this book was widely unknown among Indian astrologers before the 1980s. So one of the most influential books was widely unknown. The supposedly great antiquity of this work is challenged by the fact that ancient authors did not write commentaries on it and apparently did not even know of it. There are so many footnotes that you can check it. Anyhow, again, this in no way is meant to denigrate the great Indian astrology. On the contrary, we are setting the facts straight. Regardless whether it's Indian or Vedic, we have to, as you will see, that the Indians themselves call it Hindu astrology. So, all right, planets play practically no role in the Vedas. Zodiac signs are completely unknown. Second author who speaks Sanskrit says the same. Observations of the sky were important only for the Vedic sacrificial cult. Same thing in Babylonian astronomy and astrology. Same thing. For thousands of years. There is no evidence for a natal horoscope as we know it today in the Vedas. This is why I have bolded it, colored it, etc., etc. However, zodiac signs, ascendants, or other elements of today's Vedic astrology are never mentioned in the Vedic texts, like Mahabharata, the longest book ever written, longer than Homer's Iliad and the other one. All right. again, we have to. Krishna's birth chart does not even prove that natal horoscopy was known. Of course, it was not known. Of course, it was not. If it were known, you would have to have surviving horoscopes. Among these texts by Varharamihira, etc., Yavana Jataka, all these texts belong to the 1st century CE. Precisely. In spite of the unrealistic early dates assigned to them by Vedic astrologers, Vedic in commas, of course. Same thing in the in ancient astrology. In fact, ancient astrology has some older texts than Indian astrology, but within a century or so, or 2 centuries at most, because again, this horoscopic astrology did not exist. I will explain later. All right, here he talks about the zodiac, that there are some errors in the, but I'm not going to deal with this. It's not the main the purpose of this. You can check it, etc. Although there are some scholars who are aware of the problem and fight for a tropical reform of the Vedic calendar, etc., etc. Nowadays, spiritual claim of Vedic astrology. From the point of view of Vedanta, i.e. spiritual liberation, moksha, astrology is completely irrelevant. I'm going to disagree with this. But again, this is not as important, because it's not. The purpose is to give actual sources and authors and chronology, etc. But he's quoting. Nevertheless, he's quoting. He gives his reasoning. He's not just saying it because he wants to to attack something. But yes, those who seek liberation must go beyond astrological issues. That's correct. The astrology will not solve the issues. It can identify them and offer some suggestions, but you have to go beyond this. That's true. But without knowing the problem, astrology can help identify the problem and prescribe various remedies or suggestions, upayas as they call them, etc. Even when it comes to achieving earthly happiness in Vedic text, astrology is never mentioned. Well, there was no natal astrology back then, so they could not mention it. But I'm going to disagree somewhat here, because, for example, this is a great case to pay honor to my teacher Simon Chokoisky and my other teacher Nadya Lakaeva, but above all to Simon Chokoisky here, because in the Bhagavad Gita they give, was it there or was it in the Mahabharata? It was in this one, Bhagavad Gita. They give advice to the various castes, Brahmins, etc., warriors, etc. But this advice, it is very valuable. But this advice, you cannot fully use this advice unless you know your dharma type. And my teacher Simon Chokoisky is the astrologer in the world, the first one who took this and he developed it. He developed a way to determine the dharma type based on your natal chart. Then you can look at Bhagavad Gita and see what it writes, what it says, what it prescribes, what it recommends. But without knowing your type, because it gives advice for the 4 types, and the 5th type is the outsiders, you cannot use it. So again, it's not the so to say the problem of the Vedic text, because the Vedic text, there was no astrology back then, no natal astrology, so it gives some general advice. That's the reason here. But if you know your dharma type, you can do wonders. Basically, I have a separate consultation about that. My teacher Simon Chokoisky has a whole book on the dharma types, which I strongly recommend. The 5 dharma types by Simon Chokoisky. There is a test that you can take, a free test with the book or on his website. But there is also an astrological method that's more accurate if you'd like to determine that. There are rules about that, of course. All right, let's continue. Mahabharata, etc. Precisely. Rather, it can be compared to astrology in ancient Mesopotamia, where the momentary celestial configuration was used to draw conclusions about the fate of the country. This is called world astrology or mundane astrology. Precisely the same thing. Nothing to do with natal astrology. So again, as I said in my video about Babylonians, about the brief history of ancient astrology, if those astrologers who claim we're Babylonian astrology, we practice Babylonian astrology, if they keep claiming that, they have to use only Babylonian methods, and then the reading will be 2 to 3 minutes long. Likewise here with Vedic astrology, let's determine the moon star, the bird star, the nakshatra of the moon. Give me some delineation. That's it. We're done basically, or for the most part. No hero of the great epic ever goes to an astrologer for counseling or fortune telling, no matter how serious his life problem may be. Again, he could not. He could go to a diviner to use divination, but not astrology, not natal astrology. All right, let's move on because I have a lot of ground to cover. Yes, likewise, this influence that came from Babylonian, from the Mesopotamian tradition, that it was not until the 5th century BCE that the zodiac was standardized to 12 equal signs of 30 degrees each. So all those thousands of years of astronomy and observing the sky, they had value, they had merit, but they were basically stagnating until the zodiac came about, and later on, especially when the horoscopic astrology was born. And this is where the Indian astrology was very, very influenced by ancient astrology, Hellenistic astrology in this way, in this occasion, I should say. All right, let's move on because I have. Yes, that's true. Indian astrologers have a very great difficulty accepting anything that could be older than what they call Vedic astrology, or that could influence their astrology, but they simply have not studied the texts. They have not, and the arguments they make are heated and without little substance. Because again, very few astrologers in the world know ancient astrology and Indian astrology, or 2 or 3 schools. Very few. You have to go through the actual sources, go through them, read them, systematize them, understand them, compare them. The authors Varahamihira and Kalyana Varman also refer to Greek astrologers with great respect and even reverence. Of course, it's normal. As what I'm sure Greek and or the Hellenistic and also Persian and Roman empires, so they would also refer to the Indian astrologers with reverence. Of course, this is but this influence was from the west to India, not the other way around, or should I say it came from the eastern parts of the world to India, which is so Indian was all right. I'm not going to do with the zodiac, but it was only around the year 500 CE that Indian sky watchers began to notice the precession of the equinoxes. Well, ancient astrologers, they knew about it 500 years earlier or more. Actually, that's not entirely correct. What I mean is, precession was discovered, at least officially, by Hipparchus in the early 2nd century BC, so around the year 160, probably, or 170, something like that, BC, before the Common Era. But ancient astrologers, few of them were aware of precession. Actually, few of them. For example, one of the most famous ones, and in fact, he's the most influential astrologer in history, is called Claudius Ptolemy, 2nd century. He wrote his book Tetrabiblos in the Alexandrian Library in Egypt, 2nd century, and he explicitly embrace the tropical zodiac. But I'm not going to go into the tropical issue. That's not the point. The point is that so-called Western astrologers, they had knowledge earlier than the Indian astrologers, knowledge of precession. Similar to Hellenistic astrologers, Varhamihira does not discuss the sidereotropical problem. He does not give any preference to why he gives preference to the sidereal zodiac, etc., etc. There is another astrologer who lived around 500 who was aware of precision. Anyhow, I'm not going to. Alright. Ayanamsha, I have a video about Ayanamsha. Yes, I'm a proponent of Lahiri. In my experience, it works most accurately, more accurate than Krishnamurti. Again, I was taught the sidereal zodiac with Indian astrology, and I use the sidereal zodiac here, but the tropical always with ancient astrology, because that's the ancient astrology is tropical astrology, 80% or more of its history. All right. Zodiac. Here how he was insulted he was called a liar, atheist, fraud, miscreant, etc. I mean, that's he was in debate with these people. I've had debates with some Indian astrologers. They're so rigid, so fanatical that it as Vigdikara said, anti-Vedic basically. All right, what's next? Yes, so these two people again, they speak Sanskrit, folks. Here there is a lecture called History of Indic Astrology by Ali Olomi. He's a doctor of history. He teaches history in the US, I believe in California. He had this audio lecture published on the 28th of March 2022 in his Patreon. I'm a member of his Patreon. I support him. And look what he's just a brief. I recommend subscribing to his Patreon, supporting his work. He's not into Indian astrology at all. He is into Arabic astrology, Perso-Arabic astrology. He says, as the eminent scholar of Sanskrit, Kuna Raja states, there is no astrology of Vedic tradition. Eminent scholar of Sanskrit says there is no astrology of Vedic tradition, folks. Gargya Jyotisha and these Vedanga Jyotisha, these are so we have astral omens, we have mundane astrology. As I said, I'm not going to keep it, you can read it yourself. This is just a very brief. So basically, Indian astrology is a fusion of the older Vedic tradition of omens with some of these Hellenistic and Babylonian elements. This is what it is. And by the way, these are, it's not, the influence, the exchange is not, it goes two ways. It's not just one way, one directional. It's not. The synthesis is a similar to much of astrology history, and it rejects the oversimplification of teaching astrology as having a single origin, but rather is more accurately understood through a cycle of overlapping cross-cultural exchange. Absolutely. This both rejects David Pinkley's assertion that all astrology is Babylonian, no it's not, and then adopted to India, as well as the reactionary claim that astrology is purely Indian and modern. Both are wrong. Both are very rigid. It's either this or you're wrong, get out, this is it. No. Again, this is it's not correct. Kenneth Miller, this is the source. This is a transcript of the Yavana Jataka Greek astrology in Sanskrit with a question mark. This is a transcript, and Kenneth Miller, he himself says that he has studied Hellenistic, medieval, modern, but he himself practices Indian astrology since 1995. So 30 years as of this year, because the show is to 2020 or 2023. You can check it. That doesn't matter. So he says, I always call it Indian astrology. That he says, I prefer the term Indian astrology than Vedic astrology, because to me that would be like calling Western astrology biblical astrology. Very true. Can you find some astrology in the Bible? Absolutely. God created heaven and earth. He said, let there be light, let there the day and the night. What is this? This is the doctrine of sect. Very, very crucial doctrine. It was somewhat transmitted to India, but in ancient astrology it's absolutely crucial. Whether you're born during the day or during the night. For those born during the day, the sun is more important. For those born during the night, the moon is more important. But this is just the beginning of the delineation, etc., etc. So can you learn can you find some astrology in the Bible? Absolutely. Can you learn how to read the chart from the Bible? Of course not. And as you see, it's the same in the Vedas. Yes, Jyotish, Indian astrology, is a limb of the Vedas. Jyotish Vedanga, but this is, again, it's not a horoscopic astrology text. Same thing. I'm showing you a person after person who is into this, studying this for decades, etc. The sources, etc. Saying same things, and I will show you the sources. I will mention the sources. Further, Professor R. Santanam, he was a very famous scholar who translated a lot of the classical Indian astrology texts. He was one of the teachers of James Braha, of American Jyotish James Braha, in the 80s, and he himself, Santanam, he translated BPHS, Brihat Parashara Horashastra, in 1984. And if you check the book, the term Hindu astrology is encountered 4 times within the book itself. The term Vedic astrology is not mentioned even once. Folks, 1984. No Vedic astrology. He himself is an Indian. He's a native. He's a professor. No Vedic astrology. What's going on here? What's it? You see? Okay. Next. Point 4. Vedic astronomy and Indian horoscopic astrology. When does the former end and when does the latter begin? In other words, when does Vedic astronomy end and when does Indian astrology begin? Horoscopic astrology. Great topic. You will not be able to. It will take you a long time, even if you're an astrologer, to take unless you know ancient astrology. Because I briefly touched on this earlier, but here I will give the source. One of the main problems is as I'm approaching the examination and the examination of the major sources of Indian astrology. One of the main problems is that for some reason the Indians are very poor in they do a very bad job of chronology. They don't. That's one thing. The other thing is they don't give actual charts in their books, very overwhelmingly. And if you do not give actual charts, there is a big problem, because you cannot date the text. You have to date the text by some other methods. All right. So, but to answer this question, well, as I said, until the emergence of horoscopic astrology, and by horoscopic astrology is meant the type of astrology that has an ascendant, a rising sign. Without the ascendant, you cannot put the planets in the 12 houses. You don't have a natal chart without an ascendant. The degree of the ascendant, not just the sign, the degree. Without the degree of the ascendant, you cannot calculate in the exact degree of the planets. You cannot calculate the divisional charts, the Vargas, etc., etc. So, to answer this, you have to know the earliest horoscopic astrology texts that exist in the world. And these texts, my friends, are from ancient astrology. And these texts are from the first century of the Common Era, although in the last few years there are scholars who found some horoscopes from the first century before the Common Era, so some decades earlier, that in Egypt, they're Egyptian astrology. But again, nothing like 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, none of that nonsense. 2,000 years at most, or 2,100 years at most. It's not even 2,100 years. This is when horoscopic astrology was invented, was developed. And who developed it? It is, I think this is what it's called, Hypsical. His name was Hypsical. I'm not sure about the spelling, but this is how it's pronounced. He was a scholar. He was an astronomer. He was a scientist who lived in the 2nd century before the Common Era. So he produced this work. We don't have the exact decade, but let's say 140 years before the Common Era. Hypsical on Ascensions. Let's see. I can put it here. This one. See? So it may be some decade later, but we don't have the exact year or decade when he produced that. But anyhow, on Ascensions. This is the guy, Greek mathematician and astronomer. This work on Ascensions. Remember this guy. So because before his time, there were thousands of years of astrological tradition, mundane astrology, world astrology, and in Babylon, and also in India and other etc. But there were no individual horoscopes. So this knowledge allowed for the creation of horoscopic astrology. So the first horoscopes, they come from 1st century of the Common Era and 1st century before the Common Era, but again, there are just a few, and they use a slightly different system, these Egyptian ones. But anyhow, 1st century before the Common Era, or yeah, so 2,000 years ago, roughly, let's put it this way, 2,000 to plus minus 50, 60 years. This is it, folks. So this is when Vedic astronomy ended and Indian horoscopic astrology began, or we should say this is where Vedic astrology ended and Indian astrology began, to put it more accurately. And by ended, I don't mean that astronomy ended, obviously. What I mean is we had the birth of Indian natal astrology, Indian astrology as it's called, Jyotisha. This is the birth, natal Jyotisha. 1st century BCE, or rather 1st century CE. But this is, and again, this is in fact, this is for ancient astrology. For Indian astrology, it's a little later. In fact, now let's see. Now someone could say, wait a second, you are making these statements, do you have any proof? Well, of course I have proof, friends. I'm not, I always have proof. I mean, I'm not gonna, the point is to educate and to clarify. And I was gonna show this later, but anyhow, in my, that's not a problem, I'll examine it later from a different perspective. In my book, A Brief History of Ancient Astrology, I quoted some of the most influential texts. What I'm doing here, what I'm about to do here. How am I with time? 1 hour. Okay. And one of the books that I gave is one of the oldest books. This is it. It is from the 1st century AD. So this book contains a number. Probably there are over 10, probably 10-15 charts. I don't remember. I can check. But about 10-15 charts, natal charts, that have survived. So these are some of the earliest horoscopes, and again, they're with planetary positions. You can date them, which you cannot do with the Indian books, at least not the first ones, because they did not provide this. So here is I will briefly go to this, but. As you see, Dorothea's Carmen Astrologicum, this is the book, page 18, this is just a 1 page, siblings, 11:30 a.m. May 2nd, 29 AD. First century there is a horoscope. This is just one of over 10, and it allows you to date the chart. But anyhow, let's. So this is the proof that ancient astrology predates Indian astrology, and I will cover it later that about the influence, how ancient astrology influenced Indian astrology. But the point is that that's not that important. What's important is to know when natal astrology, when natal horoscopic astrology, and hence when Indian astrology was born 2,000 years ago, around 2,000 years ago. Not 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, no, about 2,000 years ago. That's it. Alright friends, let's move on. Point 5, primary sources of Indian astrology, Jyotish. It has taken me a long time to check and to compile and to systematize this. First, let me let's see. Let me provide some sources. For example, here, because I was looking, as you see, they're just for example, this astrologer, he gives 7. Well, I give many more than 7, as you will see. This one, classical texts, he gives. I will provide the links in the description. He gives. There are not that many. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This one gives 11. I give more, but anyhow, but at least this one he gives some information, but it's not as detailed, and not all of them are dated. But that's all right. This is a very useful post. That's all right. All right. So let's get started. Let me say that I will provide the most important ones later on, and but when you see that it is colored in blue, these are the most important ones. So the first one, Brihat Parashara Horoshastra, attributed to sage Parashara. Again, this you cannot date this guy. Is he a man? Is he a sage? Is he a alien? Is he a hybrid? Is he a what? The book is written. There is here, which is the exact dating of modern Brihat Parashara Horoshastra, around 600 to 700 of the Common Era. You see, 7 centuries later than this book, for example. The most comprehensive extant Shastra or Indian natal astrology, in particular predictive astrology, though ascribed to Maharishi Parashara, the origin is unknown. The most popular version contains 97 chapters, translation of Santanam. I already showed you where there is no Vedic astrology, there is only Hindu astrology mentioned 4 times. And here I put myself a note, I added a note. I did not see a single example chart, actual example chart, actual horoscope, birth horoscope. So the book is long, but there is no exemplification of the doctrines, which is unfortunate. But I'm warning you from now on. This is the case for Indian astrology. Very few example charts, unfortunately. So it's a close tradition, oral tradition also to a large extent. So it is what it is. But for our purposes, it is very unfortunate, because if you had example charts, you could date it, and you could say, because with the planets, we can look at the planetary tables called ephemeris, and we can check. Because when you have 7 planets, or in this case 9 planets with Rahu and Ketu, you can check, you can date the chart to within 1 day, or actually to the day and to the hour, if you have the exact degrees, minutes, and the location. All right. Second one, Jaimini Sutras by Maharishi Jaimini, translated by B.S. Rao. This is Raman's grandfather. No dating. Now this is Jaimini branch. Jaimini is a there are several branches in Indian astrology. Jaimini, so Parashara is the most prevalent branch, the most famous one. Then Jaimini. Some astrologers say that they are separate branches. Others insist that they should be used at the same time. I am not any authority. I am a student, so I cannot. One of my teachers practices Gemini, another practices Krishnamurti, KP, Krishnamurti Padhati, which is separate. But anyhow, the point is that this is a traditional work, very important, long book. I also put here, I did not see a single example chart. Sorry, you can look up Gemini Sutras in Wikipedia. So we can't date this. We don't know when he lived, etc., etc. Sorry, when you don't have charts, again, I'm going to keep repeating this, hammering this point, but it is what it is. So you see where some astrologers can get the idea, this is thousands of years old. Well, prove it. You can't prove it. You can't. Because there are no example charts. Alright, and even if they were, actually, they would not be complete horoscopes if this were, let's say, more than 2000 years ago, because there was no horoscopic astrology as I showed. Alright, Bhrigu Samhita by Rishi Bhrigu, translated by Dr. T.M. Rao, a compilation or encyclopedia, no dating. Sage Bhrigu, the father of Hindu astrology. You see, you can a clan of sages descending from the ancient fire priest Bhrigu. I'm not gonna. You can pause and read this, but although the available evidence suggests that it was compiled over a period of time by the various students of Bhrigu. So, folks, what I wrote down here is there are example charts on page 282. They are without dating, without degrees of the planets and the ascendant. It is not clear whether they are from the author of the book, Sage Bhrigu, or from the translator. Based on the conclusion of the translator T.M. Rao, it appears that they are from the translator, not from the original author. It is what it is. Moving on, again, no dating. Alright, and there would even if they were dating, no degrees of the planets. Brihat Jataka by Varahamihira. Varahamihira is one of the most famous Indian astrologers, written in the 6th century around the year 550, translated by V.S. Shastri. One of the 5 principal texts by Varahamihira. The other 4 are, you can see them here. It's also one of the 5 major treatises of Hindu predictive astrology. As you see, Hindu, not Vedic. It's not Vedic, it's Indian or Hindu. The other 4 are, I have them later. Here what I wrote down was that there are example charts added by the translator V.S. Shastri. It also speaks about the horary branch. I did not see historical natal charts with provided birth data. This is what I wrote down as a note for myself, about as a sort of a judgment on this book. Speaking of that, I would like to share what my teacher Simon Chokoisky shared about Varahamihira. He explains that Varahamihira predicted that the prince, the son of the ruler, would, I don't remember, I think would be killed or severely injured. I don't remember, sorry, but I think killed by a wild pig, meaning on a specific year, month, and day. That's wow, that's out of this world. And what happened? The ruler took it seriously. He said, I'm going to avoid this fate. So he started killing all the boars that he could find in his kingdom, and also he locked down his son, the prince, in a tower in the castle. And when the final day came and passed, on the next day he said, it's now we were able to cheat fate. We're going to let's open, let's set my son free, the prince free, etc. And when they opened the tower, the prince was dead. And the prince was dead because a big statue of a boar hit the prince or on the head or something, or smashed the prince, and he died because of that. And as a result of this prediction, Varahamihira became extremely famous. These are the words of my teacher Simon Chokoisky, and he also had a son. I've included him later on. His son was also an astrologer and also wrote some books. All right, moving on. Devanagina Valabha by again Varhamhira. This book discusses the principles of horary astrology, or the Indians like to call it Prashna. As we have horary astrology in ancient astrology, so there is horary astrology in the Indian tradition called Prashna. Very different than the horary astrology, but extremely accurate also. I've witnessed Indian horary astrology. Very impressed. I myself practice obviously and have services for finding lost animals, for predicting, what have you. I have examples on my website and in my videos actually. Alright. Next, Garga Hora. So this one Varahimhira, 6th century of the Common Era. Of course, because Garga Hora by Rishi Garga, written maybe in the 1st century before the Common Era. Maybe. But it includes planetary conjunctions in the 12 houses of the chart. There are no example charts, only aphorisms and combinations. Here, Parashara is considered to be the most ancient of Hindu astrologers, and second in order of time is Garga, whom this guy Gauranga, while agreeing with Dr. Ken, places in the 1st century BC, before the Common Era. So they can't date him. That's the problem. And when you don't have example charts, you have speculations. It is what it is. Alright, Garga Hora Shastra by Sage Garga. It appears to be this one, but it's a different book, written maybe in the 1st century before the Common Era, translated by Patak KK. Consists of 3 chapters, as you see, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Alright, next one, Horashara by Prituyasas, written in the 6th century CE. He was the son of Varahimhira. So this was one. Prituyasas. The book was translated and annotated by Santanam. Again, this one who translated many other. What I wrote down here, I should translate because it's in Bulgarian. It's a condensed style and provides a lot of information in summarized form. It gives the meanings of the planets as rulers of the Dasha period. No example charts. Friends, again, no example charts. Damn! Your father, I'm talking to Prituyasas, the author, your father Varhamhira taught you how to predict. Why didn't you include some example charts? Share some of this knowledge, please. Alright. Uttara Kalamritam by Kalidasha, written in the 17th century. This one is also very respected, this book. He gives a method to finding the past, present, future. Varhamhira, he gives a lot of this astrologer was versed in other types of astrology, not just Parashara, but also Tajika, which is actually Perso-Arabic astrology. It has nothing to do with India, and also horary astrology. Jaimini, this guy was incredible. Huge respect to him. All right. Faladepika by Mantreswara. Again, since if you see it in blue, it's one of the most influential ones. Again, notice, friends, there is dating, even though it's 600, 700, 800 years old, they date it within several centuries. Translated and annotated by G.S. Kapoor. American Jyotish astrologer Paul Manley dates the Faladepika to 16th century, around. Says that it's an abbreviated version of the Jataka Parijata. I have Jataka Parijata later, which dates to the 14th, 15th century. So you see, this book, by the way, Vigdikara, this guy here, Vigdikara, he has a great YouTube channel. He knows Sanskrit and he has several videos of this book where he reads Sanskrit, the original, translates, and then analyzes and comments on the original. Alright, the text you can read that. I'm not gonna, because there's lots of books more. Saravali by Kalyana Varma, written in the 9th, 10th century. One source said 9th century, the translator says 10th century. This is in blue, so one of the most important ones. Alright, does not contain example charts, though the translator added some, in brackets, incomplete ones for illustration purposes. So again, you have to ask yourself, what's going on here? So which textbook does contain example charts then? Because you see, alright, Prashna Tantra by Nilakanta Devagina, written about 1550, so 16th century, translated by Raman, dealing with Prashna or Horary astrology. So it's a mixture, I myself wrote, of Perso-Arabic horary and Indian horary. The book has only 4 chapters, but they are very long and extensive. I wrote. Does not contain example charts, though the translator, Bangalore Venkataraman, one of the most famous Indian astrologers of the 20th century, he has added 12 horary charts from his practice. Thank you to the translator. Jataka Alankara by Ganesha, written in the 1630, so early 17th century. Brief treatise gives several planetary combinations. Alright. Hora Ratnam by Balabhadra, written in the 17th century, translated by Santanam. Very thick book, 900 pages, although it includes the original Sanskrit, and this is only volume 1. The translator died before being able to translate volume 2. Having said this, I myself wrote, I did not notice a single example chart. Someone gonna say, what the hell is going on? Out of 500, 450, 500 pages of text, not a single example chart. Sorry. By the way, this shows great stinginess by the Indian authors, great secrecy. As an astrologer who specializes in ancient and Chinese astrology and has studied the classical sources, I can tell you that the Chinese astrologers were also extremely stingy in their exemplification. They were very, how shall I put it, sparse in their delineations, very brief. The most generous ones were ancient astrologers, particularly European astrologers of the second millennium, because there is no European astrology until the 10th, 11th century. And also there is an astrologer called Vitius Valens who has over 120 charts. He is the most generous one of the ancient astrologers. He lived in the 2nd century. The Anthology of Vitius Valens. By the way, the book has been freely translated by Professor Mark Riley. You can download the free PDF, you can look it up, you can see the charts, etc., etc. Alright, moving on. Jataka Tattva by Mahadeva, written in the 19th century, translated by V.S. Shastri. Much importance is given to the connection between medicine and astrology. Of course, they're very connected. Talking about traditional medicine, of course, not this allopathic medicine with these pharmaceutical poisons. Alright, the book is a lengthy treatment of the 12 houses, but it overwhelmingly consists of if-then. So, if this, then that. If you see this, then it means that. This is a problem. Indian astrology is structured a lot like this. Chinese astrology also, to a certain extent. And the problem is that you will see a book of thousands of rules, and out of these thousands of rules you get like 10 or 15 for the chart. What they're going to do with the other. The author does not tell you. This is a problem. You need a teacher basically to guide you through this, because you can't. This book is not enough by far. Forget it. And I have not colored it in blue, obviously. Samhita Skanda by Sanandana from the Narada Puran, unknown dating, short ancient treatise dealing with the principles of Indian astrology. Alright. Sankeda Nidhi, which means the treasure of learning, by Rama Diallo, written in 19th century. The book is a treatment of the 12 houses, but also, I wrote, overwhelmingly consists of if-then. Same thing. If you see this, then it means that. If you see this, well, what happens if you don't see it? What are you going to tell the client? Very, very insufficient. Lagu Parashari, aka Jataka Chandrika, based on Brihat Parahara Shora Shastra, BPHS, but so this book, Lagu Parashari, has no dating, but because it's based on BPHS, which we know was written in the 7th century or 8th century, then we know that Lagu Parashari was written later than 17th century. Written by an unknown author, translation in notes by O.P. Verma. Alright. Madhya Parashari, also written by the unknown author, is believed to be written by the unknown author of Lagu Parashari. This is why I put them one after the other, and used with further interpretation in hits about Vimshotri Dasha, as it is correctly pronounced, not Dasha, Dasha, and Vimshotri. My teacher, Simon Chokoisky, who knows and he has taught Sanskrit. This is the correct pronunciation of this method. Alright. Satya Jataka by Satyacharya, unknown dating. However, the book quotes Faladipika and Jataka Parijata written. So, if the book quotes them and they are actual quotes and not the translator who has added them, they were not added by the translator, then it automatically follows that this book was written after the 15th century because Faladipika is after the 15th century. Alright, Yavana Jataka, it means natal astrology of the Greeks, by Yavanacharya. Now this book has caused tremendous quarreling and arguments and heated debates. I admit here that if you don't know Indian astrology and if you know about this book, if you know ancient astrology and you don't know Indian astrology and you know of this book, when you see it, you say, oh, it's obvious. Ancient astrology influenced Indian astrology tremendously. There is some truth to this, but it's not the complete truth, and it's not the most important truth. And I myself used to think so because I did not know Indian astrology. I had not gone through the classical texts. I did not have the knowledge, the technical knowledge, the practical knowledge. What I'm saying is that there is proof that undeniable proof, which when the Indians deny, but it's undeniable, you can't deny it because they do not know ancient astrology. That these Yavanas were Greeks, and that these Greeks they traveled to India. There was exchange. This was 2nd, 3rd century of the Common Era. Although the book it's believed to be originally written in the 2nd or 3rd century, but was actually its final version was written around 500, 600 AD, and this is based on the most recent scholarship of a scholar called Bill Mack. You can look him up. You can look. This is the source, Yavana Jataka in the Encyclopedia of Ancient History, Asia and Africa. If you put this in the search engine, you will see this paper by Bill Mack. All right. And here Kenneth Miller, again interviewed by Chris Brennan, he says what he says. You will see it here. But the point here is that, for example, their words in they're Greek words that were exported to India that mean nothing in Sanskrit. And the Indians took them and now present them as they come from Indian astrology. They do not. One word is kentron. Kentron, which means, again, you can where is that? Here. You can check the sound. You can check the transcript here. I'm not going to just to show you, but anaphora, kendra, etc. Kendra, which means an angular sign, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th sign from the ascendant, the whole sign, comes from kentron, which means a stake, a goat, G-O-A-D. It was used to prod cattle with. Kemadruma, kemadrumia, which means void of course moon in Greek. It became Kemadruma yoga. Anaphora, apoklima, Caden houses. Decan, dekanos in Greek, decan, it became drekana. These words do not mean anything in Sanskrit. Again, you can look this. There are other sources for this as well, and this is not. David Pingree was the one that very famous American scholar. He knew 5 or 6 ancient languages. He was the first one that he knew Sanskrit also. and Greek and etc. etc. And he was the one that that recognized this back in the 1970s when he released this Yavana Jataka, I believe a critical edition or something along those lines. But anyhow, the point is that Pingree took this very far, and he was like, ancient astrology, Hellenistic astrology influenced Indian astrology, tremendously. And if it were not for Hellenistic astrology, for what the Indians call Western astrology, Indian astrology would not be where it is. That's not true. The exception is horoscopic astrology, which was developed by this Hypsical, by this scientist in Egypt. But for the other part, what I'm saying is, I can appreciate this now, and I'm saying this to defend Indian astrology, because again, while it was influenced, it also influenced other astrologies, and I have a point later on that I'll cover this, the exchange, how one culture influenced others and vice versa. But the point is, you will notice, I did not put this book in blue. This book is not as important for the history of Indian astrology. I put this at number 21. It's not a random number, but it's somewhat random. But if I wanted to, I could have put it at the very first, because it's an early book. Many of the other books were much later, But I put it here. Why? Because even though there are some, for example, this guy, he gives Yavana Jataka as in number 7. For example, you see when he ordered them in importance, he gives it as number 7. This one, did he give Yavana Jataka or not? I think not. No, he didn't. He didn't even include it, and there is a reason why. So what I'm saying, what I'm going with this is that Yavana Jataka is not among the most important works, and you will see what the book includes. But the point is that Indian astrology had its own system. It has the nakshatras. It has for those, if they are astrologers that belong to the Western tradition or to the ancient tradition, or any type of traditional astrology, you should know that Indian astrology, the aspect doctrine is absolutely different. It has nothing, for example, Saturn is the only planet that can sextile, and it doesn't have both. It has only the right sextile, aspecting 3 signs ahead, counting inclusively. Only Mars has the right square, aspecting 4 signs ahead. Only Saturn has the left square. Only Jupiter has the trine, unless you count Rahu and Ketu as casting also trines, etc., etc. These are Indian astrology has its own system. It has even if you use the Apoklimas, the 3rd house, 6th house, 9th house, 12th house, whole sign houses, they have the Upachaya houses, which are the 3rd, the 6th, the 10th, and the 11th. So we have an angle. You have the 11th, which is a different system. They have the trinal houses. The 1st, the 5th, the 9th. So these divisions, they do not exist in ancient astrology, and I say this as an ancient astrologer. So this is important to know, because some Westerners, some traditional astrologers go overboard, as David Pingree did, and say, well, basically, if it were not for ancient astrology, Indian astrology would not develop to where it is, which is not the case. All right, and also some clients, they keep asking, is Indian astrology better, or is West or ancient or Western or Chinese astrology better than the other? That's not the point. As he says, is Oriental medicine better than Ayurvedic medicine? Better for what? Better for whom? So, but that's not the purpose. I don't want to get into this, and it's not the reason I'm learning this. Again, I'm very grateful to my teachers, credit to them and to this tradition, and I'm taking such a long time to create such a very important video, such a very informative and educational video. I myself wrote the Yavana Jataka, covers the signs, the decans, the houses, planets in the signs, planets in the houses, 12 places, whole sign houses, of course, the divisions of the signs, yogas, which are planetary combinations, and the dashas. This is what the book covers. It's not that special, as I said. All right, let's move on. How are we with time? I need to to push forward. Brihat Samhita by Varahamihira, 6th century. I already gave 2 books by Varahamihira, and it contains natal, mundane, and astrometeorology. So this is why I put it here. Garga Jyotisha, written in the 1st century of the Common Era, the oldest extant text of Indian astrology. It's written in the form of a dialogue between Garga and Kraushtuki. Fine, but someone could say, well, why the hell did you put it number 23? I mean, it's the oldest, it's this, it's that. Folks, there is a reason why. Take a look at the chapters. I will very quickly run through them. Take a look. This is divination, this is not astrology. Take a look. Birds, countries, nature of fire, array of battle, peacock, rules for propitiation, calamity. This is nimita, this is omens, weighing on balance, etc., etc. Omens of various birds and animals. So you can't compare that to the other far more important books. But anyhow, it is important. Water divining, natural destructions, earthquakes, halos, etc., etc. So you see, it's because it contains some of the older types of so it contains Vedic astrology, we can say. It contains Vedic and some Indian astrology as well, and some divination. So this is the book. Alright, moving on, folks. Sarvatha Chintanami by Venkatesha Sharma, written in the 13th century. I put this in blue, so it is one of the most important and most cited astrological books, particularly on the description of yoga formation of planets and the results of those yogas. Credit to Indian astrology, as my teacher says, and not just himself, many others. Yogas are what separate Indian astrology from the other types of astrology. Yes, as an ancient astrologer, I can say that there are many yogas which are specific planetary combinations. There are many hundreds and hundreds of yogas in ancient astrology, but in Indian astrology there are thousands, and the Indian yogas are what's the word? They are I wouldn't say better. Well, they're more useful. They're in my experience they're more ordered. I mean, you have yogas for all topics in ancient astrology. To a large extent, it's the same. But Indian yogas are. This is the mainstay of this. This is the bread and butter of Chinese. Of Indian astrology. And what, as my teacher says, what Indian astrology lacks in terms of aspects, it makes up wonderfully in terms of yogas. Very true. So this book is very important. Alright. Jataka Parijata by Vaidyanatha Taekshita, sorry for my pronunciation, written in the 14th, 15th century, translated and annotated by V.S. Shastri. Again, this is translator also, you keep seeing him. Again, I put this in blue because ranked alongside BPHS and Britat Jataka, Vahramhira and Philadelphia Itkatat and so on. This one, you see, I took the effort of ordering the chapters for easy reference. As you see, you can get an idea about what the book is. Alright, moving on. Chamatkar Chintamani by Narayana Bhatt, written in late 19th century. Delineations of the planets in the signs and in the houses. So this is just another book. It's not a Tajika Nelakanti by Nelakanta, written in the late 16th century, 1587. If you open Wikipedia, you will see that it says Indian astrology or Vedic. I don't remember. Anyhow, Hindu. It has nothing to do with this. This is Perso-Arabic annual astrology. This is Perso-Arabic annual astrology. This is the first part of the book. I have it. The second part covers horary astrology. Again, to a large extent Perso-Arabic. Also Indian, but to a large extent also Perso-Arabic. The book has very little to do with Indian astrology or Jyotish, and yet, look at the Wikipedia description. This book, this is another branch. I started talking about the branches of Indian astrology. The main branch is Parashara. The other branch is Jaimini. There is a third branch called Nadya astrology, which is very different. It's unique. I'm not going to deal with it. There is this branch, Tajika. It simply means Perso-Arabic astrology. I will show later on. Where it comes from, etc., etc. But the point is that as Vic Dikara showed India has always been very open to other cultures and to exchanging knowledge, etc. This is Perso-Arabic astrology that was imported into India, and the Indians started using it because it's a gift from God, of course. It works. It has proven itself for hundreds and hundreds of years. All right. This astrology, Tajik astrology or Varshapava, which means fruits of the year, is based on these texts of astrology. It's of Arab origin. It covers concepts of lots. They call them saham, which simply means a lot. And also the dasha system that's unique to Tajik astrology. That's true. This dasha system actually, this dasha system was added by Indian astrologers, because in ancient astrology, in Perso-Arabic astrology, in this case, we don't use that. We have other methods. I'm not going to get into them, but we have other methods. Tajik astrology predicts the events of 1 year, which are based on the solar revolution chart as well as the natal chart. Correct, yes. But Tajik astrology, Perso-Arabic astrology in India only deals with annual charts, with solar revolution charts and perfections, which they call munta. They do not deal with the natal chart, although they say that the natal chart obviously should be always consulted, and nothing that is not indicated in the natal chart cannot come to pass in the annual chart. But they do not have textbooks on natal ancient astrology, which is Perso-Arabic astrology in this case. They do not. They only have solar revolution textbooks, which is Varshapala. All right. Prashna Marga by Narayanan Nambutiri, written in 1649, translated by Raman. This is a very long and comprehensive book I wrote on the natal and above all on the horary branch. The book also has a chapter on Nimitta, the science of omens. I've been extremely impressed by the science of omens. This science, to my knowledge, was not preserved in Western sources, or at least it's not as systematized and codified as in Indian sources, and big credit to and gratitude to the Indians for this. Obviously, each culture, I've studied Nimitta, each culture colors its omens based on it. Its history, etc., its customs, etc., but still you can always adapt it to your own. All right. There is such, for example, omenology among the Native Americans, etc., and other branch and other cultures as well. But this one here, anyhow, number 29. Bhavarta Ratnakar by Ramanuja, written in the 12th century, translated by Raman. South Indian astrologers use this book for a long time. This book gives rules that are not present in other texts. These rules have been found to be very useful and also revealing by great astrology scholars. I myself wrote it. Includes delineations of the 12 signs, various topics, yogas, combinations, and the results of the dashas. Alright, and the last one I have is Muhurta by Bangalore Vata Raman, written in the 20th century. Although it's in the 20th century, it's traditional, because this is what they call Muhurta, is actually electional astrology, or this is also called choices in ancient astrology. That is electing auspicious times. It is called Zeri in China, in the Chinese astrology, which is date selection. Electing auspicious times for the realization of a desired thing, getting married, opening a business, selling a house or buying property, or taking students, or starting to study something, or what have you. There are so many uses. Creating babies, sowing the seed, as they call it, etc., etc. All right, this is it. There is another book here, Gargan Samhita, but you see, I'm not gonna use that because it's not as useful. There are other books also that I checked, but these 30 are. Alright, there is another one called Ashtaka Varga. This is based on the Ashtaka Varga system, which is used the effects of a planet in transit. This is a separate, my teacher explained, this is a separate system that it's very mathematical. Not all astrologers use it, but from what I've seen, what he and also my other teacher Nadya Lakaeva demonstrated, it has merit definitely. And basically, you can see when a given planet transits a given sign, you have to check the points, because the results this planet gives are modified by how many points it receives. So a malefic planet, a negative planet, can can, if it has a lot of points in a given sign, which is a house or sign houses, it can its effect can be milder. Whereas a benefic planet, if it has fewer points, the promised effects, the promised beneficence, the promised gifts that it bestows will be far fewer. So it's important. It's an important technique. All right, I showed this. All right, now we are on to point 6. How are we with time? I want to. All right, so the point 6 is the interaction of Indian culture with Hellenistic, Persian, Arabic, and Chinese cultures. This is an important point because there are these astrologers that, especially Indian astrologers, that practice Indian astrology, not just that are Indian natives, but from other countries all over the world that were taught this astrology, that they say, as I said, this is the best, this is the oldest, this is the most superior, this is this. The Indians, they exported Buddhism to China, they did this, they did that, they etc. etc. But as I showed, they exported this South Indian chart to China, etc. etc. But for example, there are astrologers also that say, well, Indian astrology, it exported the nakshatras, which are the lunar mansions, to the Persians and to the Arabs. First to the Persians, and then that's true. But what happened was that there are 27, but with the sidereal zodiac, obviously, because it stars. But in the Persians and the Arabs, they have 28. And they used them with the tropical zodiac. Initially, it was mixed sidereal and tropical. They were, but late 8th, early 9th century, the tropical became dominant, and basically, to a large extent, not entirely, but it's, for the nakshatras, for natal charts, it was like 95% tropical, or even more. You have to find exceptions for sidereal. It was all tropical, basically. So also there is the most famous Arabic astrologer called Abu Mashar, who lived in the 9th century. He used the 9 parts, which the Indians call the Navamshas, which means same thing, 9 parts, which are purely Indian in origin. So he incorporated them, but he was not the first one. I mean, he was the most influential one, but he incorporated them in ancient astrology, but particularly in natal and also in solar revolutions in annual astrology. Al-Biruni is another very famous Arabic astrologer. He lived in the 11th century. He was a polymath, polyglot. He traveled to India. He has books. He practiced Arabic astrology, but he also knew some Indian astrology. But he was the tropical zodiac. But that's not the point. The point is that he traveled to India. He has books that have survived. He was also a mathematician, I believe, and you can look him up. Muhammad al-Biruni, very famous. But he was influenced by Indian astrology. Let's see. On the other hand, I showed you this. I showed you this wheel. Now take a look here. This is a professional software called Parashara's Light. The light of this creator, Parashara, of this branch of Indian astrology. This is a professional software that I've purchased a copy of, and credit again to my teacher. He used it. He was the one that recommended it, and I see that it's a terrific software. And so the point is that this is the South Indian chart format. This is what is called the North Indian chart format. Look at this. You see, medieval view. Medieval view, Hellenistic view, the round wheel. So this medieval view puts the ascendant here, whereas the Indian chart puts the ascendant here on the 10th house. how am I with time? 1:54. All right. So what happens is that they call it North Indian chart, as you see, right button, North Indian. This is North Indian. I can change here to North Indian, but it's not North Indian. This format is medieval. It comes from the Arabs who got it from the Persians. Take a look at this format. This format is the same as this format, is the Hellenistic format, only it puts the ascendant here on the top, not here, where the eastern horizon is. It puts it here. And what I'm saying is that the Indians call it North Indian chart format, but it's not. They got it from the Arabs who got it from the Persians. And if someone wants to disprove that, they are welcome to try. But this chart comes from the 1st century. Take a look at the format. The format is basically this one. I mean, it's basically we can see also here. Take a look at this format. It's basically this one, Aurea format. You see? Take a look. Same thing. This is the ascendant. So this comes from the Hellenistic world. The Indians got it from here. There is no evidence to suggest otherwise, but there is plenty of evidence. I can show you. And again, 1st century. So this is Persian. The Hellenistic puts the ascendant here. There is another chart format that's so unless someone can find Indian horoscopes that are 1st century or earlier that have this format, please be my guest. But if you do, please let me know. I would really appreciate it. I haven't found such. I browsed through the books. All right. Also, there is another chart format called Bengali. This is a very weird format that I have not researched this, but what I do note, and only an ancient astrologer would know this. First of all, notice that it is very similar to this one. In fact, it's the same one. It's the same one, but the ascendant is not here, which is the eastern horizon. This is the ascendant roams. It can be anywhere, like the South Indian format. The South Indian format, this is the signs are fixed, but the ascendant, the houses are not. So this is always Aries, this is always Taurus, this is always Gemini, always, never changes. But the ascendant changes. So this is Libra, and automatically the others they are placed. No, this is Virgo, as you see here, Virgo. This is Scorpio. This is Sagittarius, etc. And in fact, many Indian astrologers, they do not even give the signs because they know that this field here automatically corresponds to Libra because it's the 7th from Aries. This corresponds. This is Taurus. This is Scorpio, etc. This is Aquarius. This is Leo, etc. So the point is that this format has the ascendant also roaming, but what is fixed is that this is always Cancer. Now someone might say, what's going on? Why Cancer? Well, I need to check this from the Indian perspective, but what I can tell you is that there is an ancient astrologer by the name, but he is not the only one, there are others, by the name of Firmicus Maternus, who lived in the 4th century. He was a lawyer before he became an astrologer. He wrote one of the longest books for ancient astrology. He lived in the 4th century, and the book is called Mathesis. He wrote it in Latin, not in Greek. He wrote it for a patron, for a friend of his. And in this book, he explains about the Thema Mundi. The Thema Mundi is the hypothetical chart of the world. And this Thema Mundi has Cancer ascendant, and the ascendant in the Hellenistic chart, as I showed, is always here. So this is an assumption. This is not this. I want to make sure. This is an assumption. I'm not saying, but this is an assumption that the Indians, because I have not seen. Please, if someone watches this and knows, please let me know. I have not seen in Indian sources that talk about the Thema Mundi, or that for some reason place Cancer as the first sign, because Aries is the first sign in the zodiac, and yet this chart format has Cancer, where the first house is generally placed in the Hellenistic wheel. So this is basically a chart for the Thema Mundi, and you place the natal ascendant inside. Again, it's called Bengali. Let's go back to South Indian. So this is how Indian astrology got its North Indian and some of the other formats from ancient astrology and from the Persians, from the Arabs. And for those that don't know, just a second. There is a I can't find it now. I showed you this. I showed you Carmen. I must have closed it. Anyhow, what I was going to say is that it's a historical fact that India was has been attacked multiple times and has been conquered, parts of India, northern India, by Arabs, starting from the 8th century, from the 8th all the way to the 18th century. So some Arabs they ruled parts of India for several centuries. I will make a video mentioning this later on. I have planned it, but the point is that as the Arabs conquered northern India, they brought their astrology with them, and the Indians, as the wise people they are, they incorporated it. So this type of what we call Tajika comes directly from the Arabs. This is important. So this is for point 6. Let's move to point 7. One more thing also, this is important, you should know. The Indians are very good at Indian astrologers, I mean, not just people born in India, are very good at the so-called upayas, which in Sanskrit which means remedies. So Indian astrology is not just predictive as is ancient astrology and Chinese astrology, but it is also prescriptive, remedial. It prescribes remedies for people to alleviate their difficult placements. I'm not discussing to what extent they work and etc. But it has a very, very long tradition. For example, in ancient astrology we have gems. We have some other. In Arabic astrology there are lots of remedies as well. And I'm very grateful that for example Dr. Aurelio Lomi in his Patreon, he gives these translations from Arabic. But what I see from these translations also is that Arabic astrologers they were exchanging knowledge with Indian astrologers. And for example, in terms of remedies, one of the most famous Arabic astrologers and his son, his name was Sao ibn Bishr. He was influenced by Indian masters in terms of remedies. So he learned some shall I say, secret knowledge or some, not everyday knowledge for remedies. He learned it from Indian masters, and Dr. Aurelio Lomi, he provides, he makes a translation of some of this. So remedies are, this is how Indian culture, Indian astrology has enriched Perso-Arabic astrology. It has been back and forth, but in this respect, at least, it seems that the Indians have the upper hand, and they were the ones that have to teach other cultures the most. Credit to the Indians, of course. Alright, point 7, the subjugation of India by the British Empire and the sucking of its wealth dry, the looting of its wealth, the destruction of its education and culture. Let's see. This is Ken Rao. So this Englishman, this British Thomas Babington Machady's, take a look at this quote that I started translating earlier. I have traveled, etc., etc. I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief, such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values of people of such high caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of India, of this nation. which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture, for if the Indians think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation. When the Anglo-Saxons plan to do this, they do this. I say this because this happened to my country, Bulgaria. This has been happening, it continues to happen since 1989. But anyhow, the point here is that the British Empire not just looted the Indian people, but it destroyed Indian culture, Indian knowledge, cultural heritage. So, and he continues. I strongly recommend you read this interview by Ken Rao. Take a look. In the year 1901, we had 10% male literacy and 0.5% of female literacy. Such was the mineral condition. There was never any question of any Jyotish tradition. People make all kinds of claims about Jyotish paramparas, but don't believe them. Parampara means passing along of knowledge from a teacher to a disciple. Not just this is Jyotish, so astrological parampara, but any parampara is this. It all got destroyed basically. Then slowly it got revived, etc., etc. So it was all fragments. Whatever book I got, I read. Ken Rao. Again, this is the. I will provide the link in the description. Take a look. This is a quote. So this is, by the time the British Empire was forced to leave by Gandhi, India's economy produced only 4% of the global gross domestic product, GDP. It was 23% 170 years ago when the Brits came and conquered India. Why? Because India had been governed for the benefit of Britain. There are some very useful videos made by on YouTube, not just on YouTube, made by various Indians on this topic. I recommend them. Here is a quote. Britain's rise for 200 years was financed by its depredations in India, meaning by looting, by robbing India. In fact, Britain's industrial revolution was actually premised upon the deindustrialization of India. Quote by Shashi Tharoor, Indian Member of Parliament. And I learned, in fact, when I was researching this, I did not know about this, about the specific of this. And because it's, at university I studied English, I studied, British culture, etc., Anglo-Saxon culture, how great, how benign, the blah blah blah. It was all propaganda. Anyhow, the point is that I learned about this from a politician in an interview, and he said that there is data that the British Empire looted for $43 trillion over a period of around 2 centuries. So it amounts to $20 billion per year for 2 centuries. In fact, it's more than 20. It's like 20 something billion every year for 170 years. Just imagine. And just imagine where India would be if the British had not come. Again, I'm not Indian, but it is what it is, and we have to somehow talk about this. We have to bring this to light. There has to be some apology, as this Indian member says, rather than reparations, some apology. But empires did not apologize, as you know. All right. This is the link. This is the link. When and how did Muslim conquest of the Indian subcontinent occur? This is a very good article. It's a long one, as you see, from the 8th to the 18th century. Can be divided into multiple phases, etc. So the point is as the Muslim conquered, the Indians got astrology from them, which they added to their own Indian astrology. Again, I will make a video. I have planned a video about this. You will love it because it's I learned about this from an astrologer, and it's worthy of mentioning. I will provide the source when I make the video. All right. What's the conclusion? Point 8. well, here there are some Bulgarian things that I don't think you would appreciate, so I'm going to skip them. But what I will say is that there is a famous Bulgarian revolutionary in the 19th century, was very famous in Europe, by the name of Georgi Rakovski, and he traveled to India. He knew Sanskrit, he knew several ancient languages, and there is a monument in India today, and he said and he proved that there is a very deep connection between the Sanskrit language, which is the oldest language, and Bulgarian language. In Bulgaria, we have one of the oldest cultures in the world. We have the oldest calendar, which is, again, according to UNESCO, 7,500 years, the Bulgarian calendar, which the Chinese got from the Bulgarians, from us. So I want to end with three things. First of all, there is this great, I'm going to translate it from Bulgarian, there is this great editor's rule. This rule was popularized in the 19th or 20th century. It goes like this. I think I've given it before. So because if you're unhappy, then criticize. This is point one. Point two, you're criticizing. If you're criticizing, then suggest something. Then you're suggesting something, then do it. Then point three, don't just suggest it, do it. If you're doing something, then be responsible for the results. If you're not ready to go through all these 4 points, then do not arise. Do not begin. Do not start anything. Because there are people that like to criticize. You don't do this, you don't do that. It's easy to criticize. This is just point one. But are you offering constructive criticism? Are you doing this? Are you responsible for the results? No one is perfect, but again, it's easy to criticize. But this is just point one. So again, this goes not just for Indian astrology, for anything, not just for astrology, for anything. In fact, the man who I learned this from, he says that these rules, this is called the editor's rule. This rule is what separates boys from men and girls from women, because mature people they observe the editor's rule. Remember that. It's very important. So I've done through all these points. This is a very long video, but I've been as thorough as I can be. And in closing, I would like to close with something very important. I'd like to pay my respects to my teacher again, my teachers, Simon Chokoisky and Nadya Lakaeva, and also to say that, to express my admiration for Indian astrology, for its how shall I put this? Its very strong awareness of the spiritual work and that it does. Because I'm one of the few astrologers in the world that is versed in ancient astrology and Chinese astrology. Again, my website is about ancient and Chinese astrology. Indian astrology is something I've been doing for just 2-3 years, but I will keep doing it. But the point is that I have not encountered such a spiritual component, such a strong spiritual component in ancient or Chinese astrology in terms of gratitude, in terms of opening and closing of lessons. What I'm talking about is mantras. There doesn't have to be mantras necessarily, but in the Indian tradition, it's a ritual. Every class begins with a mantra and ends with a mantra, and this mantra is sung in Sanskrit, and it sings and it wishes various beneficial things for the teacher, for the student, etc., etc. This is it simply grows on you. If you don't like it, it grows on you, because it's the vibration, the intention behind it is what matters. And Sanskrit it's a beautiful language. I mean, I myself, I did not like it initially. It's not among my favorite ones, but as I began to listen more, as I began to listen to some songs, etc., it's a beautiful language. I can't deny that. So I'm going to leave you, friends, with two quotes that are very, very important. I don't want to leave my viewers with, you know, with all this looting, you know, this what the British did, what the Arabs did to the Indians, etc. How they robbed them, how they, you know, etc., etc. How they destroyed, etc. I want to leave you with something that's eternal. And these are two quotes. The first one is this sage Satyacharya, and the second one is by Parashara. So Satyacharya said, "O my dear disciple, the science of astrology is a great secret. It should be guarded with care. It should never be revealed to people who have no faith in God, who are skeptics by nature, and who do not show reverence to their guru, to their teacher. The sacred science of astrology should never be taught to bad people, nor should it be revealed to too many people and very frequently. It should be taught only to few chosen disciples who really deserve and have the necessary qualifications. Listen to me with care." Now, this is before I present the second quote, because I would like to end with the Indian quote. I am going to I might have mentioned this before, but it's time that I mention it now. There is a famous, very famous European astrologer by the name of Guido Bonatti, Italian. He lived in the 13th century. He wrote one of the longest books called Liber Astronomy, a book of astronomy. It has been translated in English. And he has several quotes about, he has entire passages, in fact, chapters about philosophy and astrology, etc., defending astrology. And in one of his quotes, he says that knowledge is to material wealth as is wheat to chaff. In other words, this knowledge is eternal. This is the wheat, and the chaff, in other words, the chaff is CHAFF, chaff, which means the what you separate. When you clean the wheat, you throw away the chaff, the leftovers, you know, the dirty things. So material is chaff. So this is why they say this again. These Indian sages, they say the divine, the science is the sacred science of astrology. And the last quote is by sage Parashara. He said, "O Brahmin, I have narrated the same Jyotish Shastra." Shastra means special rules, precepts, teachings, etc., that which I learned from them. "Do not impart the knowledge of this Shastra to one who is insignificant, slanders or calumniates others, is not intelligent, is wicked and unknown to you. Teach this supreme Vedanga Jyotish Shastra, the science of astrology, only to one who is gentle and amiable, devoted, truthful, brilliant, and well known to you." This is the conclusion of his book. Very, very important words, because this knowledge can be used to help people, but it can be used also to greatly harm people and manipulate people. So keep this in mind, please. Do your diligence, research the astrologer you would like to use to use his or her services, etc., etc. So this is with this I conclude this very long video. It's 2 hours, but I hope it was instructional. Again, it took months. As you see, it's long because I have not come across this information. So if you would subscribe to my channel, I would appreciate it. If you have a question that pertains to the topic, I would be happy to answer it in the earliest time possible. If you have a comment, if you know some other important classical sources, if you share them, I would appreciate it. If you subscribe, I would appreciate it. And this was it from me. Thank you for watching. I will create separate chapters for the video for you to orient yourself. And this is it. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.